Woodcraft, helping you make woodwork.
Edit that part out when you, yeah. All right. So good afternoon. We're going to do a little bit of turning with some Tru-Stone today. How many people have turned Tru-Stone so far? Steve, I know you have. Nobody else? Nobody even tried it yet, huh? Okay. Well, then I'm glad we're doing a demo for you today, because Tru-Stone is a really nice material to work with. It's different than pretty much anything else that we have as far as a pin turning blank goes. How many have turned acrylic pens? Okay, I figured we'd get a little bit more response on that. Well, if you've turned acrylics, then you know that an acrylic acetate pen blank is pretty much the same no matter what color the blank happens to be as far as its actual turning properties go. Reason being, acrylic acetate is acrylic acetate no matter what color it is. The base material of those blanks is all the same. All they do is change the colors, okay? With Tru-Stone blanks, on the other hand, I grabbed just a few at random off of the rack over there. Tru-Stone blanks are made from natural ores that are mixed 85% ore, which is it's obviously pulverized first, then 85% ore with 15% resins and binders, which turns it into a material that we can actually machine quite easily in some cases. But because that base material varies from one blank to another, or one flavor of blank to another, if you will, the turning properties of each blank are different. Okay, so the pink Asian coral, for instance, is much easier to turn than the dino bone, which is like a jasper kind of stuff. Okay, the banded malachite, easier to turn than the jasper. Okay. The one that we're going to work with today is white turquoise, which is actually fairly easy to turn in the world of Tru-Stones. So they do vary depending on which blank you happen to choose. They are all just a little bit different. Some are much, much harder than others. There's one that's called Charo White. Now Charo White is a beautiful blank. It's a nice deep purple color. The stone itself is found along the Charo River in Siberia, hence the name, and it is extremely hard. I turned a blank of Charite one time. It took me about 3 hours just to knock the corners down. Okay, so it is extremely hard, but it lets you turn an absolutely gorgeous pen. Charite pens are very, very pretty. They have that nice deep purple color. Sometimes they'll have some black banding in there for a little bit of contrast, but it's a very, very pretty blank. Azurite is another really hard one. Nice deep blue color. You'll see azurite mixed in with malachite sometimes. That presents a whole new world of issues, because now you have a very hard material mixed with a very soft material. So, you know, it creates a whole nother challenge as far as the turning goes. Hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft. You have the idea. But again, Tru-Stone, different than what you're used to with acrylics. Okay, don't be afraid of Tru-Stone. It's not necessarily harder to turn than acrylic, but you've just got to be a lot more patient with it. Those of you that have taken my pen turning classes have heard me say before, turning acrylic is not necessarily harder than turning wood, but it's different than turning wood. Well, turning Tru-Stone is not necessarily harder than turning an acrylic, but it's different than acrylic. Okay, and so there's some precautions that you want to take when you're preparing the blank to get it mounted on your mandrel. And we're going to kind of talk about those for a few minutes today as we progress through the demo. One thing that I always like to do when I prepare a Tru-Stone blank is the way I lay out my tubes. I will vary it, and obviously this is a piece of wood, this is not a piece of Tru-Stone. But typically, you know, we'll take one of the tubes, start at the end, lay it out, draw our line across there, take our other tube, lay it on there, draw our line, and that's how we lay our tubes out. We've all done that, right? Is that pretty much how everybody does it? Okay. With Tru-Stone, they do sometimes have a tendency to blow apart at the end when you drill it, okay? And trust me, there's nothing worse to have happen with a $15 pen blank than to have the ends blow out to where you can't use that blank for what you intended to turn, okay? So to counter that, what I like to do is instead of laying out from the end, I lay out from the center, okay? So I'll have a line down the middle, and then I'll lay one tube here and come down. And of course, these marks are meaningless without a tube on here, okay? And then I'll lay out from this side, and now I've got waste material at both ends. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Okay? I will then cut the blank one time right here. Okay? Then we drill it from the center. We haven't cut this part off yet. Okay? So what that does is if you do have some blowout when your drill bit exits the hole down here at this end, you've got lots of extra material there that you can then, once you've drilled both ends, then you go back to your bandsaw, your chop saw, table saw, whatever it is you like to use to cut your blank. Then you make that cut and that cut, and if you have had a blowout from the drill bit exiting, you've just cut all of that off. So your blank is still quite usable. So it all depends on how you lay it out before you cut it. Okay? That's probably one of the best things that you can do, is don't lay out from one end like we're all used to doing. Lay it out from the center. Okay? Then that way you drill, say you have a chunk blow off across the corner. What would you do if it was that chunk right there? You'd be toast. You'd make a Wall Street.
But don't you have the same chance of blowing out when you start your drill from the center?
Yes, you do. But remember, this is all waste out here.
Right, you can always keep
Okay,
going further.
and so as you drill through here, okay, if when your drill bit exits all the way out down here, if it blows out that chunk right there, you don't really care because you're going to cut that all off with your bandsaw anyway.
I'm saying you're going to cut it here in the middle.
Yeah.
And you're going to start drilling from there.
Uh-huh.
Why would you not have as great a chance at blowing out there as if you start from
Because
this end?
because typically it's when you break through the bottom of the cut that you're going to have that breakout.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just like if you took a drill, you know, if you're drilling straight through a board, you know, typically you want a little, maybe a backer board under to support the fibers as you exit. That's because as you exit the cut, your drill bit tends to tear out the fibers and so forth. Same principle is at work here, except that, you know, if all that blows off, I don't care because I'm going to cut it off with the bandsaw right there.
Understand.
Okay? Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. That's probably one of the biggest tricks that I want you to remember, is laying out the blank will make a lot of difference in how well the blank holds together.
Any challenges in cutting it with the bandsaw?
No. No. The question, if any of you couldn't hear it, was, are there any specific challenges when you cut it with the bandsaw? Not really. Even the harder ones machine relatively well with regular woodworking tools. turning tools, bandsaw blades, you really, drill bits. You don't really need anything different in order to machine Tru-Stone. And it's because of the way they're manufactured, okay? But again, remember, some of them are indeed harder than others, okay? So, take those precautions. Some are more brittle than others. Take those precautions, lay your blank out like we just talked about. When you drill, don't let it get hot, okay? Heat does not get along well with Tru-Stone, just like with acrylics. Don't let it get hot, okay? Drill a little bit, pull your bit out. Clear those chips out of that hole. Check your bit every so often to see if it's getting hot. If it's getting really hot, best thing you can do is stop.
Brad point?
Brad point works just fine. Brad point, twist, whatever you got. Yeah.
Preference?
Huh?
Preference?
Not really. Depends on the size bit that I need for a particular project. I've used both with good results. So, but clear the chips out a lot. Don't let it get hot. If your bit feels hot to the touch, it's too hot to keep drilling. Okay? Stop for a couple of minutes. Let it cool down. Okay? You do not want to get this stuff hot. That's another factor, Bob, that will help contribute to it blowing out when you drill through the bottom. If the bit's too hot, if the blank itself is too hot, it can blow out in the bottom. So take precautions. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Now I've had good luck turning Tru-Stone with both high-speed steel and carbide. Again, I kind of vary the choice depending on the material that I happen to be using. I like the carbide tools. They work really, really well, especially on these harder materials. So we're going to run the lathe at about 1800 RPM today. Anywhere from 18 to 24, 25, 2600 is a good speed to turn at. And then we'll go through, depending on how far we get today, we'll go through our regular sanding and polishing routine. Yes, sir.
How long will that tip last turning it?
It will vary from one type of material to another, just like it would if it was, different types of wood. Will cause your cutter to go dull. On average, you should get several Tru-Stone pens out of one edge. Yeah. But again, it's going to vary depending on the material. If I turn this white turquoise, if I turn 5, I'd probably want to turn my cutter once through those 5 pins. If this was Chara white, I might not get through half of it before I'd have to change the cutter. Okay, it just varies. No concrete answer. Part of it would depend on there'll be a difference between your turning technique and my turning technique as far as how long the cutter will last. So, okay, anything else before we get going? Okay. So here we go. White turquoise.